Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Jane and I'm the face behind Simple Crafted Life. In this video I will talk about the 4 core materials that you need for punch needle. They're all equally important and I'll talk about them each individually. And those 4 materials are your punch needle, your yarn, the fabric and the hoop or the frame. And I hope you find this useful. If you have any questions at all, then leave them in the comments box below. First, we'll talk about the punch needle. This is the most important tool when you're going to choose what project you want to make. The first thing you want to start with is by choosing your punch needle. So they come in lots of different shapes and sizes. They're made by lots of different brands. Here I've got the Lavors. Here got an Ultra Punch. I've got some Oxfords as well. And they all work in a very similar way, to be honest. So they allow a continuous length of yarn to run through the channels. So the yarn flows all the way through here and comes out the needle tip. The channel is the slots running through the needle in this case, in the Oxford punch needle case. But if you've got a needle like the Lavor, then your channel is the hole that runs through the metal needle. And yeah, some punch needles require a threader, so your Lavor, because it doesn't have your slot running through it, it's just got the hole, that requires a threader to feed your yarn through. But the Oxford will be a lot easier to thread because you don't need that threader. And each punch needle is designed for a specific thickness. So if you're using a wider punch needle like this Oxford regular or like the 5.5mm Lavor needle, then you can use chunky bulky weight yarns, or you can double up or triple up on yarn. For example, like if you're going to go for a DK weight, then you can double up, the same with Aran and things like that. The punch needle creates a flat stitch on the working side and loop stitches on the back. And traditionally the loop stitches would have been the right side of the work, but nowadays, to be honest, it's whatever you prefer. And then some needles allow you to punch loops that are fixed height. So for example, these Oxfords, with the Oxford you cannot adjust the needle height, so they're fixed. They're always going to create the same loop height. But take this Lavor for example, and the Lavor comes with 7 different notches, so you can create 7 different loop heights with the same needle. And with the Lavor fine punch needle embroidery needle, then you can just move the tip up and down to create the loop size that you want, so it's also adjustable. What I would say is, when considering buying a punch needle, think about the type of project that you want to make and the thickness of yarn that you want to work with. Wider needles, such as the Oxford or the Lavor 5.5mm, work better with larger projects like rugs and cushions, because you'll be working with thicker yarn. And then if you want to create a piece that's really intricate and has got lots of detail, then you might want to consider the Lavor punch needle embroidery tool or the Ultra Punch tool. So that is the punch needles. The next thing you want to look at is your yarn. So the needle will dictate the thickness of the yarn that you can use with that needle. So I'd say that the most important thing is that the yarn flows freely through the needle. So fluffy fibres like mohair are more likely to cause snagging, so that could cause your loops to be uneven, or it might make your punching more difficult. But then on the flip side, if the yarn flows through the needle too easily, then you might also find that the loops are uneven. So if you're unsure about whether the type of yarn will work, then I would just punch a little test square before going ahead with your project. And if you want to make a project that's going to have a lot of wear and tear, such as a rug or a cushion, then I recommend using a yarn like this. This is a chunky rug yarn, and this yarn is 100% wool, and it's quite coarse, so it'll stand the test of time. But then if you're going to create wall hangings or anything like that, then any fibre that flows through the needle works quite well. So here I've got some tapestry thread, and I've got some DK weight knitting yarn, which works quite well as well. It really just depends on the type of the project that you're going to be working on. So the fabric that you choose is quite important, because you want to choose a fabric that will last over time. So I wouldn't recommend burlap and fabrics like that, because they'll just decompose over time. As a general rule of thumb, the smaller the width of the punch needle, the tighter the fabric and the thinner the yarn. So as the punch needle gets thicker, you'll need to use a looser weave of fabric and a thicker yarn. I'm going to talk you through three fabrics that I've got here with me. So the first one is monk's cloth. So this monk's cloth is 12 to 14, it has 12 to 14 holds per inch, and it's got white guidelines every 2 inches. When choosing fabric, just make sure that it's 12 to 14 holds per inch, because they do sell others that have much larger holes, and what that means is that your loops just won't stay in place, so that's quite important. And what I would say about monk's cloth is that it frays quite easily, so I have secured the edges using a serger or an overlocker, but you can use fabric glue, or you could also use just masking tape. And with the monk's cloth fabric, I would use a regular Oxford punch needle, the fine Oxford punch needle, the largest tip of the Levor punch needle embroidery tool, and both the 5.5mm Levor needle. Then I've got this linen loose weave fabric here, and this one I would also use with the same needles as the monk's cloth, so both Oxfords, the 4 and the 5.5mm needle, the Levor, and the largest needle tip of the Levor punch needle embroidery tool. And like with the monk's cloth, this also has a tendency to fray, so it's worth securing the edges. And then the last fabric that I wanted to talk to you about is this cotton, 100% cotton fabric. It's very tightly woven, as you can see, and it's got these natural little flecks running through the fabric. And this is what I would use for your Levor punch needle embroidery tool, so that's this one, and your Ultra Punch. And another fabric which I don't use but I know that others do is the weaver's cloth. So that's it for your fabrics. Lastly, I wanted to talk to you about the frame or the hoop that will hold your fabric taut. And this is the last component, and it's important because you want your fabric to be stretched as tight as possible. Amy Oxford likes to say that the fabric should be as tight as a drum. So what you can do is, if you've stretched your fabric, get a quarter or a 20p coin and bounce it off the fabric. If it bounces off, then it's as tight as you want it to be. And what will happen if it's not tight enough, it could create uneven loops. It will just make it harder for you to punch, and it won't be as pleasant, and it could also put pressure on your wrist. So this wooden embroidery hoop is something that a lot of people do use. I personally don't recommend it. I just find that the fabric just pops out. What others do is they use fabric glue and secure the fabric to the frame, but I've not tried that myself. Then the second hoop that I wanted to talk to you about is this Ricoh plastic embroidery fret hoop, and this one I've tried and I quite like. It's got this groove that holds the fabric in place. It's quite economical, so it's quite a beginner friendly hoop, and it comes in a variety of sizes as well. And then the last hoop that I wanted to talk to you about is this Morgan no slip hoop, and this one is actually patented, and it's got a tongue and groove design which secures the fabric in place. This one is a little bit more expensive, but I really do think it's worth it. It really does hold that fabric in place really well, whereas the Rico is good, but you sometimes do have to tighten your fabric that little bit. So those are the hoops that I wanted to share with you. And lastly, I'll talk about the frames that you can use if you want to work on larger projects. So the first frame that I have here is a canvas stretcher bar. You can get these at any art store, to be honest, and they're quite cheap, and they come in lots of different sizes, so they're a good DIY solution and quite beginner friendly in terms of budget as well. And you'll need either push pins or a staple gun to secure your fabric in place. Your second option and more expensive option is the gripper strip frame. So these gripper strips are made specifically for monk's cloth, and it makes tightening your fabric really easy. This gripper strip frame is also great if you want to work on a really large project and you want to move your project about. It just makes it that much easier. And I would say that this is the best frame that you can get if you're going to be consistently working on large projects. It just makes your life so much easier. So those are the 4 core materials that you'll need. So just to summarize, your punch needle, your yarn, your fabric, and your frame or your hoop. If you have any questions at all about any of the materials that I've mentioned, then leave a comment in the comments below and I will get back to you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this useful. If you liked this video, then please subscribe to my channel for future videos like this. Bye.